Good evening. Nope. Hello. There we go. Good evening and welcome to the Kennedy Center Millennium Stage. And this particular evening is the first of a series that's being presented by the DC Jazz Fest. This is the 13th annual DC Jazz Fest. Hopefully all of you have got your brochures as you were coming in and know a little bit more about our festival. We are a citywide event. We present programs in all four quadrants of the city, and we are in 21 different neighborhoods here in Washington, D.C. So my guess is that for many of you, we are in your neighborhood. We have a lot of free programming, of which this evening's performance is one. And for this evening's performance, this is the first of a series of 6 concerts on this stage, the Millennium Stage, between now and the 19th. Between now and the 19th of June. And we're calling this series Bass-ically Yours. And the reason we're calling it that is because Washington, D.C. and the DMV, I should say, and the DMV, the District, Maryland, and Virginia, has a wealth of wonderful bassists. And so many of these bassists are also band leaders. And so we thought it would be nice to put together a series featuring bass-playing band leaders. And for our first program tonight, it's Amy Shook and the SR5 Tet. What is the SR5 Tet?
Well, the SR5 Tet is actually the Shook Russo Quintet, but it's, abbreviated SR5 Tet. We thought it looked nicer when the logo. Yeah.
Well, good evening again. I'm Willard Jenkins, the artistic director of the DC Jazz Festival. And this young lady's name is?
Amy Shook.
Amy Shook is a wonderful bassist, as you're about to discover with this evening's program, which is the first of a series of bassist band leaders. Let's get started by asking, where are you from? And, what are some of your earliest recollections of music growing up?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm originally from Idaho. Does anybody know where that is? Yeah, okay, all right, good. Yeah, well, because it's one of those vowel states. I get Iowa, I get Ohio, I'm like, no, further west, Idaho. I'm originally from Boise, Idaho, and I started actually on violin, and I first, in terms of jazz, I was really riveted when we had gone to the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival, which is in Moscow, Idaho, which is where eventually I did go.
Been there a couple of times.
Yeah, man, and that's where I eventually did go to get both a bachelor's and a master's degree. But the first time I was there, I was in 8th grade, and I was singing in the jazz choir. I hadn't started playing bass yet. And we were there for the evening concerts, which were always very, really quite epic. And now even when I think back on it, I just, I didn't know what to expect. I was in 8th grade. What do you know when you're in 8th grade? But I remember hearing a number of different ensembles. I heard Lionel Hampton, of course, with Dizzy Gillespie. I heard Carmen McRae. But the most riveting was the Ray Brown Trio. And I had no idea what I was listening to. I just knew that, wow, I want whatever that is. That's amazing. And it was with Gene Harris on piano and Jeff Hamilton on drums. And
Ray Brown, of course,
and
the Hall
Ray
of Fame
Brown,
bassist.
Ray
Yes.
Brown on bass. Actually, a great friend of mine always said that even Ray's bass, when it was laying down on the ground, you could just feel the groove coming off the bass because it had been played into it so much. But, yeah.
So, is that how you came to play the bass, or were you playing already when you got that exposure?
No, that was actually the before I started playing bass. The very next year, in my junior high jazz choir, the bass player that was playing in the combo was going to high school, and so there was going to be a vacancy in the bass chair in the combo, and I thought, oh, well, I'll volunteer for that. And so I spent the summer in Boise. There's actually a great program every summer called the Swap Strings program, which I really hope is still in existence. And if you were a string player in the orchestra in the public school, during the summer, for free, you could go and choose a different string instrument and be in an orchestra and learn how to play that instrument. So I did that with both the bass and the cello, 2 different summers, but the bass was the first one. Yeah.
Cello.
Cello's great too. I like cello, but bass I love.
Well, what is it about your music education that convinced you to become a performer? Because, you know, a lot of your peers, and you do, I'm sure, as well, but a lot of your peers chose to be educators, and some of them actually went into the tech side of the music business. But what made you decide to become a bassist performer?
You know, I don't know that I ever had one specific moment of a decision with that. I just always knew I wanted to be a performing musician. And, you know, you just keep plugging away at doing that, trying to be, you know, as good as you can, learn as much as you can, and then be the person who gets called, you know. But I would say one of the things that was a definitive moment was at the jazz festival, actually. And I was having a conversation with the bass player, Brian Bromberg. And at the time, I was still majoring in violin performance and was playing bass, but not as part of my degree. And he just said to me, he's like, you know, you need to just decide to be a bass player. And I think that was the pivotal moment where I'm like, you know what? I think I identify more with the bass. That's what needs to come forward.
Well, you're from Boise, and you were educated in the, I suppose, is that still referred to as the Pacific Northwest? Is that part of the, okay,
Yes.
You're from Boise, Pacific Northwest, and now you're based in the D.C., Baltimore area. What made you move to this part of the country?
Well, my husband, who you will be hearing later on, is a great tenor saxophone player, and we had been, prior to moving here, we had been working on cruise ships, you know, which was a great way to, you know, really hone your craft. You have to perform every night, and we were very lucky. We had just the best musicians. We often were part of ships that were inaugural, which had hand-picked bands, and so we got to play with some really great musicians. But knowing that wasn't going to be our, you know, the rest of our life, we were looking at auditions. And so he ended up taking the audition with the Army Jazz Ambassadors Big Band, which is one of the premier DC big bands. And when he won that audition, here we came, which was perfect for me, because this couldn't be a better place for a bass player, for music, for culture. It's perfect.
Well, tell us why you say that.
Well, number one, the diversity, and there's so much support, I would say, just with local musicians. And like you pointed out, there are so many great bass players in this area. And I've talked to a number of musicians in New York that would even say per capita, yes, there's tons of great bass players in New York, but there's just so many great ones here. And which is really handy when you're trying to find a sub. You got a nice long list, you know, of people to call. So, yeah. And the other thing is the camaraderie. There hasn't been a time with any bass players here since I've moved here where there hasn't been just a warmth and embracing and acceptance. You know, if you can play, that's it. You know, that's all that needs to be known.
Well, let's get personal and ask, how has that move here to this area, how has that impacted your playing and your life as a professional musician? How in particular?
Oh, goodness. How much time do we have? Well, for one, just the opportunity to play with so many great musicians, you cannot help but improve. I mean, if you're open and want to have a continual ascent and improvement, you can't help it, because there's so much inspiration. And so many of the bass players that you're going to hear that are leading bands for this festival are those people, inspiring people. But I would say just being immersed in a situation where you might not have ever played the music before, but you're going to learn really quickly, you know. So it's just been a steady ascent, and I would say I'm still on that track, ascending. Everyone I get an opportunity to play with definitely spurs me on and inspires me.
So it's fair to say that this area has a wealth of jazz artists and perhaps opportunities as well.
Oh, tremendous opportunities. Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I get to work as much as I would like with so many great musicians. You know, I wouldn't have had the opportunities back west, at least not in Boise. You know, it's a much smaller, you know, area for sure. But here, you know, it's not far to Philly, it's not far to New York, you know, so and so forth. So it's a great area.
Well, I don't know if any of you were out last weekend. Last weekend was kind of the DC Jazz Festival's preview weekend. We call it Jazz and Families Fun Days.
Yeah.
And it's at the Phillips Collection. And it's Saturday and Sunday of that preview weekend. And one of the bands we presented included Amy. It was a band of all women, and it was led by a baritone saxophonist named Lee Pilzer. But I was interested also in hearing the rhythm section for Lee, because the rhythm section, which includes Amy Shook on the bass, has, and I'll let her tell you about her rhythm section mates, but they've put out a new recording, and it's called Three Divas. Tell us about that.
All right, well, Three Divas consists of myself, Jackie Warren on piano, and she's from Cleveland, or based in Cleveland. We're trying to extract her from Cleveland and pull her closer to the East Coast because it will make it easier for us. Plus, she needs to be in a bigger venue. Nothing wrong with Cleveland. I love
that's
Cleveland.
where I'm from. Okay?
Yeah, I know. See, okay. you know what I'm saying, though. You know, it's closer to New York and us. Anyway, but the drummer is Sherry Miracle, and those of you who might be familiar with her, she has been the leader of the Diva Jazz Orchestra, which is an all-female big band based out of New York that is celebrating their 25th year in existence, which is pretty awesome, started by Stanley Kay and Sherry Miracle. And I ended up meeting Sherry, actually, through playing with her and the Diva Jazz Orchestra backing Maurice Hines for his show Tappin' Through Life. And we had played here in DC at Arena Stage, and the show eventually ended up in Cleveland at the Cleveland Playhouse, which is where we met Jackie. And we had to keep her. We just had to keep her. So from that point on, the rhythm section for Maurice and for the show has always been Sherry, myself, and Jackie. And we have had so much fun playing together over these past few years, backing up Maurice. You know, we would always come early to the theater and play for an hour or so before the show. You know, just we couldn't get enough of it. And so we decided, you know, we need to keep this. This needs to be a thing. And so we're on track with a thing. It should be good.
Well, tell us about your new record, Three Divas.
Well, Three Divas is the Three Divas, and it's kind of our introduction, shall I say. We had recorded it in Scranton, Pennsylvania for part of the WVIA Homegrown Concert Series. And they do a great thing there where if you do your performance, if you like it, you can purchase the rights and release it as an album. And we thought, you know what, that sounded pretty good. Let's go ahead and release that. So that's what we did.
And obviously, from what you're saying, there is some intent to keep it going.
Absolutely.
So this
Absolutely.
is not a one-shot trio project.
No. Nope. We'll be back actually in the area at the end of July.
So tell us a little bit about what to expect from you and your band in just a few minutes, I guess.
Magic. Okay. Well, we have a lot of original music, and this band has been very special to my heart ever since moving to the area. It kind of got started as a way for us to play music, but also write music for each other. So that's kind of been our focus, to basically compose for each other. And we ended up having a personnel change where we have a guitarist instead of a piano player now. And we do have a new album that will be coming out later in the fall. Hopefully we'll have that ready for all y'all. It's going to be great. A lot of the music that you'll hear this evening will be on that album. But it's an amazing experience getting to play music with musicians that are just really, they're as good as anybody. And to have them, especially when we're trying new things out, compositionally, they're all very, very smart. And so I like to just kind of bring something to them and say, what are we going to do with this? What can you do? Because they always make it better, and they always have such great ideas. I have, the outline, but I really want them to play, themselves, bring their personality to it. And then conversely, when, each of the individuals brings new compositions, same kind of thing. We just develop it and see where it goes. So that's what you're in for.
Kind of organic, huh?
Yeah.
Well, before we get to some music, which will be at 6 o'clock promptly, I would imagine in an audience like this that there might be somebody with a question, or maybe a question or two. I think we can get a mic circulating here.
All right.
You got that, Sydney? Okay. All right, we're going to get a microphone circulating here for that. And the young lady in the green dress in the second row. Oh, the young threw you off, huh?
Hi, Amy. I hear you're a cat fancier and a bit of a cat whisperer, maybe?
Yes.
How does that influence your music?
Well, everything I do is for the felines that are in my charge. Literally, everything I do, all the money I make goes to feeding them and putting a roof over their heads. No, I love cats. I'm not even going to mince words about that. Cats are, I don't know, if my spirit animals, all of them, they started showing up in my yard. I don't know, but it's okay. I do have 3 currently that live in my house, and I love them. And yes, everything I do is to make sure that they're healthy and loved and all that. Yes.
Anyone else? Questions, anyone? Yeah, here's one in the back there. In the back. Oh, okay.
Hi there. Oh, I'm sorry.
She'll be second.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess this was a little bit more of a serious question, but just being, I was wondering if you could give us any thoughts or comments about being a woman in maybe a more male-dominated genre such as jazz. I didn't know if there were any challenges or maybe advantages.
That is a great question.
Yes,
and
it is.
Yes,
Thank you.
there's many challenges, and more recently, there's been a great number of advantages, honestly. The challenge has always been, I remember one time back when I was in college, rolling up to a rehearsal with a semi-professional big band, first rehearsal, and walking in and someone saying, "Oh, yes, and this is Amy on the bass." And I remember looking over and actually seeing a couple people do this. So immediately I was like, "Oh, yeah? Okay." So, those kinds of experiences can either crush you, which, there's sometimes they are very crushing, but then they're also motivating to be like, okay, I have to not only be the best, but believe that I'm the best, and maybe even, be better, because I have to prove myself. So there's a lot of having to prove oneself. Although, I have to say, in recent times, there has been, all these great women musicians who have been getting more airplay, more accolades, more visibility because they're great musicians, not because they're women, but because they're great musicians. And there's just been a tremendous support for that. You know, I think about the three divas, and we've had a tremendous amount of support, and will continue to, I imagine. You know, and that's one of the things I so admire about Sherry Miracle, is all these years she has worked tirelessly to find great women musicians that otherwise were unknown, you know, and largely because they were women, you know, but bless her, yeah.
So the cello is like really goofy and awkward when you're young and you're carrying that bad boy around. What made you go from the violin to like heavier and goofier and heavier and heavier? Or what inspired you or brought you to the bass?
Well, like I said earlier, it was really hearing the Ray Brown trio and hearing Ray Brown play the bass and just, you know, being in awe of what that felt like. You know, I didn't know anything theoretically. I didn't know the songs they were playing. I just knew how it made me feel. You know, it gave me that pain in my heart that was good, the good pain. So from there, I was very fortunate because at my high school, they had more than one bass. So I was able to keep one at school and have one at home. So I didn't have to take it back and forth too much. However, whenever I had to do performances out, I had a little tiny Honda hatchback, stuffed the bass in there. You know, the neck basically came all the way through the front two seats and touched the dashboard. You know, so it was all, you know, it was just the right size. But yeah, that basically it was Ray Brown, you know, and just wanting whatever that magic was to experience that.
So I suppose that just shows that young musicians really should listen.
Listen.
Yes.
Yeah, listen. I mean, I am self-taught on bass. Now, a lot of my training on violin and just, you know, technique and things like that translated. You know, I could kind of modify it and figure out what I had to do with my body to make that work. But listening was how I learned the music, you know, trying to listen and copy, you know, I want to sound just like that. How is he getting that sound or that tone, or where are those notes? I don't even know what they are, you know. But listening, lots of listening.
I think we got time for one or two more. Us, one over here. And now, wait, the microphone's coming.
Oh, thanks. I noticed you got your graduate degree from the University of Idaho.
Yes.
And I happen to know that's where the Lionel Hampton Festival is, and I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that and whether it's still going strong now.
It still is going strong, and that festival is the prime reason that I went to that school, even though I was going on a violin scholarship, you know, in Idaho. Even though it was just once a year, that's where the jazz was happening, you know. That's where you could hear, I mean, there were so many musicians that, I mean, when I think about it, it's still staggering how many great musicians I got to see and got to talk with. And the great thing was when I was there as a student and playing bass, they always had clinics. You know, these artists would have their clinics, and there was always a shortage of bass players to play with them. So I promptly volunteered and, you know, got my butt kicked all over the place and embarrassed. But, you know, it was really the best experience, you know, to be literally immersed in, you know, a sink or swim situation. But, yeah, the festival's going strong still, yeah.
Well, so that we can give you just a few minutes to chill for a second before you perform, why don't we cap it by asking what's next for Amy Shook?
Well, I'm going to pick up the bass behind you, and we're going to play some great music. But you don't mean immediately next, right? Oh, okay. Oh,
I know that's coming.
Not literally? Okay. Well, I'm just gonna keep playing. I think I have, you know, I'll be at Blues Alley towards the end of the month with a great singer named Nicole Henry. So if you're in the DC area, come out there. And we'll be back, like I said, with the three divas at the Sculpture Gardens in July, and at some point in there, I think we're also going to be going out again with Maurice Hines, which will be really fun, and yes, more good stuff.
Well, Amy Shook, thank you so much.
Thank you, Willard. Thank you.
And please, please, please remember to pick up your copy of this very involved piece of information so that you will know all the 411 on the DC Jazz Festival. Again, it's the 13th annual. We're all over the city. We are citywide. A big weekend coming up next weekend at Yards Park, the 16th, 17th, and 18th. Friday the 16th is absolutely free. So come down to the riverfront and then come get some tickets for Saturday and Sunday. And one more thing, tomorrow evening we will be right here in the Kennedy Center Concert Hall, right in this hallway, all the way down at the other end at the concert hall for the great Pat Metheny.
All right.
So that will be tomorrow evening. And also tomorrow evening at 6 is the second in this series of bass-playing band leader concert performances. That's a mouthful. Try that one. James King, who's one wonderful bassist, also known as King James. That's how good he is on the bass.
That's
so
right.
please join us, and thank you so much for coming this evening. Amy Shook will be back on with some music momentarily.
Thanks, Willard.